Hey you guys, it's Teresa and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be it's been a while since I've done a Weird Wednesday, and hopefully this does come out on Wednesday. But I decided to kind of wrap up International Women's Month with some overlooked women, and yes, I do involve pirates because some of these women were absolutely badass. But it's really been like 2 months since I've done this, so pardon me if I'm a little rusty, if things are kind of out of order. They won't be out of order, but if they're like a little more, if they're vaguer than normal, I didn't know how much information I wanted to put in here. So yeah, I chose kind of a handful of women. I had more than this on the list, but unfortunately I didn't want this video to be super long because you all know me. I babble, I like history, I can talk about overlooked women for hours and hours and hours, so I just chose kind of ones that I haven't heard a ton about. Well, 2 of these women, the pirates, I have heard about, but the rest of them I have not, which is kind of a shame. So let's just kind of get into it. So the first one is Empress Wu Zetian, and she lived from 1625 AD to 750 AD. And she started off as a concubine for one of the emperor's concubines, and like everyone loved her by the time she was like 13 or 14. She was very witty, she was funny, she was intelligent, very kind of cunning. And she also ended up having eyes for the emperor's son. And the only way she ended up marrying his son was after she eliminated his other wife by saying that she had been the one to kill one of her daughters. And after like I think 5 years of her marrying the emperor, he suffers from a very debilitating, paralyzing, a really bad stroke. And he ends up being unable to rule, so she is placed as regent. Now during this time, she ends up managing to create a secret police to fight the opposition. She also ended up outranking both her 2 eldest sons and her son that was more of a pushover, the youngest one, into power so she could kind of tell him what to do. And then afterwards, when her son decided to step down, she was crowned empress and she became the first empress ever of all of China, which is very fun to say because considering China doesn't have a lot of female rulers, they also didn't have a lot of like pro-feminist kind of situations, but the Tang dynasty did. Aside from that, really, her rule was pretty benign. She didn't do like huge things. She kind of ended up fighting Confucian beliefs that women are subservient to them, that should be like, you know, the docile, loving kind of wife who dotes on her husband and adores him to some extent. She fought that by publishing works about like famous women in history who were rulers, who were the opposite of these things and still successful. And then I believe she passed away after like several years. But by then she had like lessened her reign on like the secret police and everything, and just wow. Also, if I'm like staring at an awkward angle, my cat is like watching birds, so I'm just waiting for him to start chattering because he's almost 2 and has never chattered, and I don't know if I should be concerned or if he's just that much of a derp. The next one is Gloria Richardson. She was born in 1922, and she is, I believe, hopefully, I didn't look this up, but it said that she was still alive. She is American. She's African American. She graduated from Howard University and at 16 and with a degree in sociology. I believe she was like in her 20s when she had her daughter, and her daughter was a part of, while Gloria's daughter was in college, she was a part of the kind of non-violent protests, and Gloria didn't want that. She was like, you know, there are other ways to get protests and non-violent is not one of them. I'm also reading off my notes. And she created Cambridge's Nonviolent Action Community, which is CNAC. She was the leader. And these protests it's not that they were super violent, but they were more, her protests were more known for confrontational and tackled like more specific and less vague issues throughout time. And I have honestly never heard of Gloria Richardson, which is kind of a shame because I think that like more women in these positions where they were in charge of these protests for like kind of civil rights would be like a bigger aspect, but we don't really hear about that. The next woman is Christine de Pizan, and she lived from the 1300s to 1430. So she was a French Renaissance writer. She was the first feminist French Renaissance writer. There weren't a lot of feminist writers out there, as you can clearly tell, and she was able to do it. Her father essentially let her like become literate, let her become educated, and when she married, her husband allowed her those same liberties. But then her husband had died, and she became the first woman to make money off of writing back in the day. And her more popular work, which I want to read, is the Book of the City of the Ladies, which was meant to kind of combat current ideas that existed for women. There she took down like famous women of history and created 3 layers, and there she built this kind of fictional city for women where they were safe from kind of the atrocities that men would commit on them. Now, I really want to read this. I think this is a really interesting topic, and I think that should have been studied, because I like the idea of putting women into a city without men. The next one is one of my pirates, and that is Cheng Yi-sao. It's like Cheng, then I, then Sao. I'll write it down so if you guys don't know how to pronounce it. But she was originally a prostitute. I forget her name, but a lot of them kind of were like, yeah, you don't really need that name. She wasn't. That part of her life was unimportant in comparison to what she did. She then left the life after marrying her husband and became a sailor. There they ended up, I think, with like, they became pirates, and they had, I think, over 70 or 80 of, what do you call them? Junks for salt trade, as well as over 70,000 to 80,000 men. When her husband died, she kind of continued that reign. She kept her position by gaining support of other chieftains, her husband's most powerful chieftain, so that way no one like opposed her. And she created a very strict code of conduct. She said that anyone who stole treasures was a capital crime. Any kind of rape, torture, abuse was punishable by death. And like literally this woman is like amazing, because she not only ended up with this many men, she had this strict code, but when she decided to retire, she diplomatically negotiated with the Chinese officials and was granted the ability to have 80 junks of salt trade. And I think she was the woman who also created her own casino and was allowed to live back in China even after like all the pirating she had done. So let's just kind of give ourselves a round of applause for the wonderful pirate that is Cheng Yi-sao. Then the last one, and my last pirate, is actually one that I do know about, and that's because, you know, I went there for studying abroad a couple years ago, and that is Anne Bonny, and she lived from 1698 roughly and died in 1782 roughly. She was a Cork native from Ireland. Shout out to all Cork people there. And her father was a well-known lawyer who ended up marrying her off to a sailor, I believe. Or she wanted to marry someone that was a sailor, so she like ran off. But anyway, yeah. So she was engaged to someone else, but she was like, no, I want to be with a sailor, and she kind of ran off with him. His name is John Bonny. Anne was originally known as Anne Cormac or McCormack, one of the. I feel like Cormac sounds more Irish than McCormack. I'll remember. Then the pair then moved to the Bahamas, since John Bonny was a sailor, you know, traveling and all that stuff. There, she met John, also known as Calico Jack Rackham, and they got involved. And back then, it was a popular thing for men to pay off the husband, so that way they could get divorced. But John Bonny refused that, so the two of them kind of ran off. However, despite this, it was a really huge. John Rackham, Calico Jack, was a pirate, and despite that, there was a kind of a superstition of like women being on board of a pirate ship, because, you know, men go crazy when there are women on the ship. Anne never actually concealed her identity on the ship. She did when they went pillaging and everything. And along these lines, Mary Read then came on the boat. No one really knows if she concealed her identity or how she got on the boat. There are several kind of different writings of that, but they continued their kind of pirating ways throughout the years. And when they finally got caught, Mary Read and Anne Bonny managed to escape kind of being hanged, because they were both pregnant at the time. There, in prison, Mary Read died a year later, I'm assuming in childbirth, because really she was pregnant. But Anne Bonny got like a lighter sentence because her father was a lawyer. She then left prison with her children, married someone, and then lived the rest of her life. Like, can we just please? I feel like no one gives female pirate credits enough. Female pirates credit enough. Enough credit. Female pirates, enough credit. That's a struggle. Because a lot of them, like literally so many of them, ended up just being able to live their life afterwards and being so cunning and like figuring shit out. I know pirates are terrible people, but I can't help it, especially when they're like, these women are like kicking ass so often. That is it for all of the overlooked women that I kind of chose. I will be leaving links for them down below. But until then, I want to know if you guys have any overlooked women that you guys kind of admire or like are terrified of from history that you have never been taught before. I'd love to hear more about them. I do love history, as everyone kind of knows. So yeah, but until my next video, you guys can find me on social media, which all those links will be down below. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye!